find out what they want to do. So I think we're going to just open it up for Q&A. Chris, yes?
Yeah, we'll mastermind and brainstorm and role play and anything else.
All right, good. So
calisthenics.
Chris Heller.
All right.
Yay!
So yeah, I wanted to. Here's what I didn't want to do. I didn't want to come up here and talk for 2 hours. So what I wanted to do was talk about stuff that you guys are dealing with, you're interested in, and that would be helpful and useful, and to get ideas, mastermind ideas of what we can do. This is on? Yep. All right, so I'm being recorded, so don't let me forget. There's a good chance I will say something that will get me in trouble later. So there's lots of ways we can go with this. Let's start off by talking about what's going on in the market. Now, how many of you guys remember, what's the date today? March 7th. March 7th. All right, remember the first week or the beginning of March last year, what was happening? What's different between last year and this year? Yeah, is there more or less?
No, it's less.
Okay, but remember really the first 6 months of last year? How frenzied was it? Like it couldn't get any more frenzied, right? It was as crazed as a seller's market gets. Is it like that today? No. So it's back to a more manageable pace. Now, in a crazed, frenzied market, how much skill does it take to get a property sold, or to negotiate, or to handle escrow issues that come up, right? Because what's the issue when there's 10 people waiting for the house? The buyer says, "Okay, we'll accept it." So in this market, it does require more skills. So we return back to more of a skills-based market. And by skills, what do we mean? Negotiating skills, lead generation skills, follow-up skills, customer service skills, all those things become much more critical. And those are the things that we need to make sure that we're always working on and always getting better at. What are some of the things that you guys are challenged with right now in the market? Inventory. And when you say inventory, what about it?
There's not enough to choose from. Very little.
Very little. So if you were a buyer, finding a house would be tough? All right. You guys know how many houses are selling each month? There's 1,800 houses a month selling in San Diego right now. So there's at least 1,800 houses available.
We're at 6,000 homes available in San Diego County right now.
Right.
Are we supposed to be at the lowest ever?
It was lower last year, but not by much.
Yeah. So here's a couple of things to keep in mind. Regardless of what's going on in the market, is it really going to ever impact your business? No, right? Because there's 1,800 houses a month selling. How many people here can handle 1,800 transactions in a month?
I'll try.
Yeah, you try, and probably die trying. So right, there's always more homes going to be listed and sold on a monthly basis than any of us could ever hope or want to get our hands on. So the issue is, are we getting our, as Gary would say, our unfair share of them? That's the issue. And what's the easiest and best way to do that? We had a leak up there. It's to control the inventory, right? He who controls the inventory controls their destiny, controls their business, controls their income, controls their life, controls everything. So that's always the focus, is having the inventory and having the listings. Now, is there anything new that we can be doing today to get more listings? Anything that anyone's doing new? Anything that's working better now than last month or last year or 2 years ago? Or 20 years ago? Right, so there's 1989 was my first full year in the business, and there's some things that haven't changed one bit. The conversations with the seller, the conversations with a buyer, the conversations with other agents, with lenders, that stuff's all the same. You know, there's no new objections, there's no new issues. Now, how we do things has changed, right? You know, back then there weren't computers or internet. There wasn't internet that we used. If you had a cell phone, it was mounted in your car. You didn't carry it around. And so those things have changed. And those changes have impacted how buyers do certain things, right? And how sellers do certain things. Right? Because when someone wanted to buy a home before, what would they do? How many of you guys have been in the business, or were in the business pre-internet? All right, Bruce? Okay, a few of you. All right, so maybe we should talk about something else, because none of you none of you can even relate to this. But here's how it used to be. We used to actually have to find properties for buyers, right? So if someone wanted to buy a home, if you wanted to buy a home, you say, Chris, okay, I'm ready to buy, here's what I want. And then my job was to go out and find it. When I found it, then I called you and said, okay, I got one for you to look at, or I got 3 we're going to look at. If you called me with a property, it was just because you heard of someone that was going to be selling a home, or you happened to drive by and see a sign, or you saw a classified ad in the newspaper that a company was advertising, and it had probably sold a month before or several weeks before, or was in escrow or something else and wasn't available. But that's what our job was when we had a buyer, was to go find the property. Now, how's it work? Who's finding the
Buyer finds the property.
the buyer finds the properties? Has anyone here recently bought a property? Okay, all right. I just bought a couple. I'll speak for myself. As a buyer, I didn't want to go find the properties myself. Now, I bought in Austin, so I didn't know the market or have access to the MLS, and really didn't want to, or have the time to. But I wanted my agent to do that. Now, if my agent wasn't doing it, and there was a time a few weeks into it where I actually got on the internet, and I actually went to looked on Zillow and some other sites. And I was sitting there going, why am I doing this? You know, what this shouldn't be happening. This is not what I want to happen. And I called him, I said, look, I was just online, and I thought maybe there'd be some for sale by or something we haven't seen, and and it was a good conversation, and he said, look, I've already checked all those, and I'm checking these, and he showed me the stuff that he's checking, and we talked about some of them, and you know, he was on top of it. But what made me think is, you know, are we doing that with our clients, or are we simply being order takers? And you know, the word order sounds very close to the word ordinary to me, and I know none of us want to be ordinary. You know, you don't want your clients to say, oh yeah, we liked our agent a lot. She was very ordinary, or he was very ordinary. No, they still want us to help them find the properties. That's still our job. So pretend like there wasn't an internet, pretend like they didn't have access to it, and what would you have to do? Knock on doors, make phone calls, network, talk to each other, you know, find out who has something new coming on the market. All those things still work today, and they actually work really well, because most of the agents that have been in the business for 10 years or less don't even have the awareness to do those type of things, because they never did them. So those are things that you guys can do. What other challenges besides inventory? So the best cure for lack of inventory is to go list a bunch of houses, and then you always have inventory. Challenges. What things you guys want to talk about? Yes?
Well, due to the lack of inventory, I was knocking on doors too, and I put together a sale, put in escrow today, where they were just getting ready to put it on the market, and I happened to knock on their door and talk with them before they went with that agent. I did the single party compensation agreement, showed it on an escrow, represented both sides.
Awesome. Awesome.
So that's what I did last year too at this time, because there was nothing on the market, and I got 2 other private sales through last year.
Yeah. So that's a great thing we can do. You guys know Aaron that helps run my team. He wanted to live in a certain neighborhood in Bressy Ranch, wanted a certain floor plan. So Alex's wife went door knocking. Not only did they find the house that they wanted to buy, got 2 other listings out of it by just doing that. So there's always people that are thinking about selling. When a house goes up for sale, by the time we see it online or see the sign, several weeks prior to that, and sometimes several months prior to that, the decision had already been made. We just didn't know about it because we didn't talk to that person. The more people we talk to, the more times we hear about that. Now that person who just put their home on the market, where the sign showed up today or showed up online, who had made the decision several weeks or several months earlier, do you think other people in their lives knew about it? You know, I bet people at their work or their relatives or their friends knew that that was going to be happening. It probably wasn't a surprise to everyone in their world. So the more people we talk to and the more questions we ask, the more of those people that we can find out about. And they're all around us. They're sitting at the table next to you at the restaurant. They're in line in front of you or back of you at the grocery store. They're sometimes live next door to you. You know, they're all around, but our job is to make sure we're always asking those questions. And don't ever think it's the other way around. It's not our friends, our past clients, our relatives' job to be calling us when they know of someone. It's our job to be calling them and reminding them that, hey, we're still in real estate. Who do you know that we could be helping right now? So what are some other examples of success stories where you've beaten the low inventory market? Adam?
Just similar story. I mean, just door knocking, finding someone, but then mailing it afterward. Having, you don't need a lot, just need a few of them to pick up the phone and say, yeah, I got your letter, I got your card, whatever pieces you'd like to use. Had pretty good success with a group called Corfac. They have a nice piece that allows someone to get a free market analysis. I saw Bobby has something that they're using. I think it's a similar type deal, but when they go to get their free price analysis, it sends you a notification, and I better believe those are the ones I'm calling and knocking.
Yeah.
Because if they're asking those kinds of questions, then that's a great lead into whether it's for a remodel, why they're asking what the value of the house is. And I've got two listings.
What's the typical, how's the typical conversation go? You get notification that I, ordered or got or asked for a CMA on my property. You call me up.
Usually I do a thank you card first.
Okay.
Just because some people are creeped out. How did you get them? Unless they leave all their info, they don't have to.
Uh-huh.
You just know their name and their address.
Got it.
And then, of course, I try to get their number other sources. But I usually send a thank you card. Thanks for taking advantage of it. If you want something more comprehensive and more precise. So I start with that, saying, because the online thing would be much like the
More generic, yeah.
You know, it's just doing some basics. They haven't seen the house clearly. So I offer that via thank you card, and then if I get their number through any sources, then I call them and just ask them if they got my card. So I use that as a call.
All right, good. Who else is doing something like that? What else are you having success with getting in the pathway of someone's decision to sell their home and then actually putting their home on the market?
I would say, as you said, talking to every person, every opportunity to give free advice has worked for me. Just yesterday, I had a person inquire about something, and they told me they absolutely did it because they're doing a remodel. It had nothing to do with selling. That conversation led to, not only have I been to her house and given her an assessment on her house, I showed her lots yesterday. In a meeting with one of my builders, I mean, this is the person that said, I'm just trying to get a value because I'm doing a remodel.
Yeah.
So when you give free advice and your service, people look at you as a resource. And then the next thing is, well, if I could find a single story and well, so that means there's a thought.
Yeah.
You aren't just thinking about remodels. So that opened the door for me to give her my knowledge. So I think you have to remember every opportunity, bad if you like baseball or it's whatever your analogy is. That don't just go, they said no, or they're, look at that as a gift service.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's opportunities all the way along. I mean, there's opportunities, you got to hopefully refer them to one of your builders who now is going to go out of their way to refer you business whenever they can. You've now created a relationship with that person. Even if they don't sell now, at some point they will. Last week we had two sellers call us. One, we sold them the house 22 years ago, and the other one 21 years ago. And Aaron said, and Aaron called me and said, hey, do you remember I'm going to forget their name. I remember the house. It's on Catalina Drive in Vista. Ron and Elizabeth Olson. And he goes, you remember? I go, yeah, I remember him. I go, the house up on top of the hill? And he goes, yeah. He goes, I can't believe, I don't even know how they get cars up that hill. But 21 and 22 years later, now they called us. Now, do you think it's because 21 or 22 years ago we made such an impact on them that they just are still thinking about us? No, they don't. But what do you think has happened for 21 or 22 years? We have stayed in constant contact with them, and that type of thing is what we do this for, right? We keep generating leads, we keep building our database, helping people buy and sell homes, and if we do it right, what does it do? It snowballs, right? It keeps increasing, keeps growing, and that's how you build a great business. So along those lines, Adam's example, what else are you guys doing that's working? What are you sending out to people? What's getting good responses? Bruce?
Two things. And the first one might be a little controversial. Saying that Facebook or social media is good is like saying postcards are good. It depends what the postcards are and what the system is and what the follow-up is. And I've had great success with Facebook, but I don't do it like most people do. I've also just recently, just in the last 60 days, started to send a letter from the heart, the Joe Stump idea, and I'm really very, very careful about what I write. I rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it until it's just right, and it's been earth-shaking.
And you've been sending that through regular mail, or?
Just through regular mail.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what are you doing? You said you don't do what most people do on Facebook. I don't know what most people do. So, but what are you doing that's not like most people?
Your life much nicer than mine.
Yeah.
I don't separate personal from the professional. I'm very happy to alienate difficult, troublesome people or people who don't fit the profile of candidate I want to work with, and I'm happy to be attractive to the people that will be attractive to that.
All right. So you're just authentic and put.
I'm authentic and I'm prolific.
All right. Good. Who else? Who else is doing something that's getting results? Or maybe I should ask who's getting results.
I have a question on the letters. Are you doing them in unmarked, handwritten letters? Are you getting better results that way?
No one could read my handwriting.
No, not the handwriting
you mean
inside, on the envelope.
The envelopes are being
Not labeled with
Right.
Williams or anything else.
The
nothing
envelopes
labeled.
are, well, the first month was labeled, the second month was hand addressed.
So you're getting better results.
And I don't think there's anything wrong.
Same
I think I'm going to keep doing labels.
labels are okay.
People know what it is when it comes. They're being trained because they're going to get 10 or 11 a year.
I think it's fine on letters doing label. I think it's fine to put your name or Keller Williams on the outside. Look, there's a certain percentage of them that are not going to open them and read them, right? But at least if they see that it came, they remember it. I flew in last night, so there was a bunch of mail in my mailbox, and I did what most people did. I grabbed it, walked over to the trash can, and and kept some stuff. But even the stuff I was throwing away, I know I was throwing away. Yeah. I will say this: if you're going to send handwritten note cards, which I do, I still do. We mail them. The only thing that's a little weird is they're postmarked out of Austin, but we hand address those. I pay someone to hand address 4,000 of them, and then just mail them
I
out.
was just trying to see if anyone had any statistical, maybe you have. I got one from Kurt Waterville at my house yesterday, and it was all unmarked envelope, handwritten, return, handwritten, and I didn't recognize any information, so I opened it. I might have thrown it away if I saw it was him. When I opened it, and it was interesting to see what was in there, and it's one.
Let me guess, he has a buyer.
Yeah, you know the program well.
She wrote the program.
I wrote it.
You just wrote the letter. It's there, there are no listing, don't sign with us, we have 200 buyers.
Right.
Which is funny, but had it said, like me personally, not just because I'm in the business, just because if I wasn't interested, I would just not even have opened it if it said. So I was thinking as a consumer, if it's something handwritten you don't recognize, would you at least open it before you deposited it?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it depends too on what your goal is and everything else. When we send out letters, and I'll just speak about our team. When we send out letters, it's for one reason, and that's just to keep our face in front of their face. It's just to keep us in their mind. Now, if they happen to read what's in the letter and they got value out of it, all the better.
But if you have a specific letter, you actually have a buyer, you are trying, not just a fake one, you have a buyer looking like Aaron door knocked, but if he had sent a letter, he's not just trying to get the brand out, he was trying to actually.
Here's how.
If you really have a buyer, then you go to their door. with a
Yeah,
letter.
but even if you're gonna send letters, personally what I would do is it would be in on my letterhead, and I'd handwrite it and I'd hand address it, or I don't know if I'd handwrite them all, but it would be hand addressed, and it would be a real letter, and I would even say, look, I get lots of letters, and you probably do, about agents that say they have buyers, and what they're really trying to do is get your listing. I'm actually writing you because I actually do have a buyer, and here's their name, and here's what they're looking for, and blah blah blah. What about phone? I wrote it up so I remember phone numbers. What are you guys doing to get phone numbers?
Title.
Title company. What else?
Using been verified, but we're trying to find. When we were talking about the meeting the other day, Vulcan 7's tied up in this area, and Land Voice. Who do you recommend?
Well, I mean, I don't know that there's any magic answers. I mean, we subscribe to a program called People Finders, and that's pretty good. I've found a lot of phone numbers on Facebook. If there's a lot of people put in their contact information in Facebook. So I would try all that social media, LinkedIn. If you're looking for someone specific, and you're just trying to find their phone number, there's also a lot of times on social media, you'll know someone that knows them, and they may be your access.
That's where LinkedIn comes in.
Yeah.
Find out
Yeah.
Even if they're not on those sites, if you just know where they are or where they work and you Google them, it's usually pretty easy to
Yeah.
find one or two phone numbers for them.
Yeah.
It just takes 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yes.
I started doing EDDM, every door direct mail, instead of our flyers because I can customize it. And I was doing fronts and backs, 8.5 by 11 on 100-pound glossy paper. And I started sending those to my farm like once every month or so. And that's worked out at 16 cents a piece. And then, trying to get the printing done inexpensively, like I found a place that would do two-sided, color for like 26 cents. So I can get a really nice glossy two-sided thing out for like 40-some cents.
And how are those delivered?
Every door direct mail, it's right into their mailbox.
Is it in a
No, it's just like laid in there. And
Does
then
it-
I also know what days, because I do it to my own neighborhood, so I know what days all the junk mail comes, and I time it. So I usually want it to be delivered on a Friday unless Monday was a holiday. Then I want it to be delivered on a Saturday.
which is another good point. If you guys are going to be doing any sort of mailing or even electronic marketing, and you're using a company to do it, make sure you're always on that list. So you know that it's happening, that you know when it's gone out, that you're getting it too.
This you just drop off at the post office. You do it right online.
Yeah.
You pick your routes. Then you drop it off at the post office. You just have to put the little indicia on there and the postal customer. And then, I take it to the post office and,
So it's a bulk mail pricing?
yeah, every door direct mail retail, and it's 16 cents per piece.
It's by carrier
You have to
route.
do a minimum
It's
of
by carrier
1,000,
route.
right?
So I pick the routes. I started out with maybe 1,600, now I'm doing 2,600. And I'm gonna just keep doing it. I've been doing it for like maybe 8 months, 9 months. I've gotten some listings from it. In fact, I had a guy last year that called another lady in the neighborhood and said, hey, you need to call this girl, because he liked what I wrote. And then, and then another lady, the one that's closing escrow next week, same thing. She got my flyer and called me.
Yeah, I think it's for farming. I think it's a great way to go. Steve, what?
Over the last number of years, Susan and I have done a lot of our business through direct mail. We use a company in Orange County, One Step, who has done our marketing ever since we've been with Prudential, or we used to be with Prudential. And then Amy and I just started, Amy Wright and I just started here recently with this company, David Collins, in Real Marketing. And we just last Friday, had our first 4-page mailer go out. And we actually took us a month to develop it, everything that we're doing. And that particular geographical farm of 550 homes, last year there were 36 sales. We represented 30 of the buyers and sellers, and there's 17 sellers, 13 buyers. But we knew we still needed to be more cutting edge than what we've done for the last number of years in there. So we just last week, a new 4-page mailer went out to all 550 homes for that development and created a website just for that development. Again, which I mean is not uncommon.
Yeah.
But to drive the sellers to it, to encourage them, that we've now bought 10 domain names for that development. And then we're just working on one more farm that we've already bought the domain names for. And we've got another, probably 1,000 homes that needs to be mailed to. It's considerably more pricey than what we used to do with the square mailer. But just not Friday, we've already had 2 calls for listening. Again, which is, we just knew we had to solidify that market.
And do you know how much those cost?
Yeah, they're $1.83 a piece. And the
Including
home,
the shipping, including the postage?
they include everything, yes. And their website design, you've got to make sure that they're not already marketing a specific area like La Costa Ridge or something that's already taken by another agent. Delma Mesa area is already taken by another agent. So things like that, but no, it's been very incredibly efficient.
So here's
The David Collins guy or the direct mail?
David Collins is the, he owns, what is it, Amy?
Real marketing?
Real marketing.
Awesome.
so here's one of the things I want to say. There always has been, always will be, more ideas than we'll ever be able to take advantage of or want to take advantage of. And there'll be new companies and new products and everything. A lot of agents go broke trying too many things and trying things for the inappropriate length of time, maybe too short of a time or too long of a time, anything else. So if you're going to do something, if you're going to spend money to make money, which is a whole nother conversation, whether you want to do that or not. But if you choose to get business that way, there's some things you got to make sure that you're really clear on. You're really clear on the costs. You're really clear on being able to measure the results. The results have to be measurable. They have to be specific. You don't want to spend money on anything where you can't measure the results. And you need to set up some parameters for yourself. How long you're going to try it for, and make sure. If you're going to try something, say I'm going to do it for 90 days, but 90 days isn't enough time, then you've just wasted money for 90 days. And if enough time is 6 months and you don't want to make that investment, then don't do it. There's, I think a good approach has always been figuring out what things you're going to do that you're going to do really well, that you're going to master. Whether it's knocking on doors, whether it's social media, whether it's farming, whatever it is, and be the best that you can possibly be at that. When you then start to add things onto your business, make sure that you do it that meets those criteria. That you can absolutely measure the results that you're getting. You know exactly what your return is on that money that you're spending. And if you don't know those things, don't do it, because you may say, "Gosh, I just did this and I just got a listing appointment out of it." But when you really analyze how much time you put into it, how much money you spent on it, and how much energy and all those other things, it may not have been worthwhile doing.
On that basis, do you have, and I would hope out of this kind of forum, we could get some historical benches or things that you've always, or people in this room, like this piece is $1.83. And I know that they're going to get listings, but they already have a big market share there, and they're going to get more market. The question is there some number that you've used on a piece like this versus the car? Do you have anything that, because I can track it, that's the easy
Yeah.
part. I just don't have enough historical knowledge to say is that good, bad, or otherwise.
Yeah, and I don't know.
ROI is easy. If I get one listing and I spend $10,000, but it's an $80,000 listing, that's 8x. That sounds good to me. But if it's, this is an expensive piece, and there's everything from this down to, 16 cents.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the return is. 3% of that kind of a piece.
Well, here's what we know. So that we know that there's, at one end of the spectrum, there's almost no cost. At another end of the spectrum, there's high costs. Let's, and I'll get back to the specific question, but let's look at the two ends of the spectrum. So what's and we're talking about farming, a lot of the stuff. So if you're farming, what's a no-cost approach to farming? Yeah, knocking on doors, right?
Well, I would,
there
is cost.
There is cost, but
I would say email, blasts are no cost.
okay. Yeah, but you might have to buy the list, or but there's, all right. But there's very little cost stuff, right? So and then there's the high cost stuff. the most profitable is always going to be the low-cost stuff, period. It's just, there's no two ways about it. Now, we also have to look at the issue of leverage, right? Because I could go out and knocking on doors all day long, and you could be email blasting and using snail mail or having stuff delivered directly to homes, and you're going to reach more homes than I am door knocking, even if I'm really fast. So those are the other things that we need to look at. Before the internet, the business was a lot simpler because there were fewer options on how to get business and how people transacted and shopped and everything else. So I always had a rule of thumb, and that was just a 10 to 1. If I was going to spend $1, I want to make sure I'm going to at least make $10. And that rule of thumb worked for a long, long time, and sometimes still does. But I think the important thing is no one can say what a good ROI is, a good return is, except for you. You have to say, okay, here's my standards. Here's what I'm looking for, and if I reach this, I'm going to keep doing it, and if not, I'm going to pull the plug. I think the most important thing is to figure out what your standards are and do that. I can tell you this: if it's not at least a 3 or 4 to 1, you probably won't make money. Because even if you say, look, I'm making $2 for every dollar I spend, there's other costs that you're not figuring in. There's intangibles. They may not be very easy to measure, but there's time, there's energy, there's other things.
I was even stepping a step back before I even got to ROI on response rate, because
Yeah.
response rate is related to the method it got there, the quality of the piece, up to you to convert it. So your ROI is based on somewhat of your system and your approach, but I'm just curious on response rate. I mean, in other businesses I've been in, I know if we do this kind of piece, I'm going to get a 1.6% response rate. I know if I send 10,000, I know what I'm going to get, and I can filter it down based on my. But I don't. I think before
I don't think
ROI, I would just know if I get 1 out of 200, is that good for this type of piece, or should I be getting 5 out of 200?
Yeah, I don't know that anyone can answer that honestly or meaningful, because here's the other thing that impacts that has nothing to do with the quality of the piece or your skills or anything else, and that is the neighborhood. The turnover rate in the neighborhood. Is it a destination neighborhood that people, once they get there, that's where they want to be, or is it a step-up neighborhood or move-up neighborhood or a neighborhood where you have a lot of transition because of the types of employers that people that live there have. There's all those other things too. I think the most important thing is for us to track what we do and track the results of what we do. You hear people talk about tracking your numbers, and it's not just a matter of, okay, how many appointments did I have, how many listings did I take, but everything. How many leads, how many inquiries are coming in, and where they're coming in from, and where the leads are coming, and how many are coming in, and what's the result of them? Are they? I had a meeting this morning at my office in Encinitas, and we were looking at last month's P&L and what we spend money on, and what things that we want to focus on, what things we don't want to do. And there was one item that it wasn't a big thing. We're spending $500 a month, and the question was, okay, well, are we getting leads? Yeah, we're getting a lot of leads. Have we converted any of them? No. Okay, so this person's thinking, hey, this is money well spent. We're getting a lot of leads off this. This person goes, wait, we're not getting, none of them are good leads. We're not converting any of them. It's not a good use of money. So looking at, conversion, what leads are coming in, not just how many and where, but, tracking all those things.
I think your point's spot on. One of the things I looked at the beginning of this year was pretty simple. What income do I want to achieve? That's really the goal. And then what can I spend on things that are useful that will provide the highest yield? You used to talk about the old rule of 10 times. I like an infinite yield. Not if I make 0 and if I make $1 and spend nothing. I guess that's infinite yield. But if I'm making the income goal that I want or exceeding it, and my yield's infinite or nearly so, that's really, really good. And I always, it's human nature. I always get lazy. I always want to do more business with less work. And I always look for a magic answer. And I've done EDM only to see them sitting at the post office for weeks and getting lost and never getting delivered. And or maybe maybe I sent to a neighborhood that doesn't have the turnover, or maybe I wrote the wrong copy. I don't know. But I like the things that I can predict and see the results from, and I like them better when they don't cost anything.
Yeah.
So for the type of client I want, that tends to work better for me. I sometimes fall into the habit of spending money I probably don't need to.
Well, and this all,
I'd be more careful about that.
yeah, and this all leads down to, so we're tracking our numbers, we're looking at what the returns we're getting. Are we looking at our financials every month? You know, are we looking at our P&L every month and saying, well, first of all, do we have a P&L? Okay, because I can promise you, every business that stays open for a meaningful amount of time has a P&L and has financials, and they look at them very closely every month. And are we doing that? And are we able to? Because we can track all the numbers in the world, but if we're not making money, or if we're not making enough money, then we have to look at, okay, wait a minute, would I be better off not doing any of this stuff? And even if I sold fewer homes, but I was making more money, you know, why am I doing this? You know, or can I sell more homes, make more money, and not have to spend more to do that? And if so, how and where? Those are the things that we always want to be looking at. You know, you know, for years I had a meeting the day before yesterday. Did you guys ever see the what's the name of that show? It's on HGTV. The guy that works, he's a Keller Williams agent, works with all the athletes. Jason Abrams, yeah. But what's the show called? Score the Deal. So Jason was in my office a couple days ago, and he was talking. He was asking me a bunch of questions. Asked me about what I'm doing now with, you know, helping us grow internationally. And he said, "Don't you get tired, you know, dealing with all these people calling you, all these agents calling you with leads and everything else?" I said, "For 27 years, for 3 hours every day, I made phone calls." I said, "I could stand on my head for 3 hours a day for the rest of my life if it would help me get what I want to get." I mean, so it's not a matter of getting tired or anything else. It's a matter of, you know, what's the best way to go do it. So for years, I always looked at, and all I cared about every month was my P&L. And the bigger my profit margin, which meant the more money is in my bank, the happier I was. And so, and if I could stop spending money on anything, I would stop it. And to this day, we still do this. That meeting this morning was, what things can we cut off? What things can we do without? What things do we no longer need to spend money on? What things are we, you know, even if we're getting a return on it, you know, is it the type of return we want? And if we can cut those things out, you know, can we increase our profit margin even more? Because that's the purpose of business, right? Profit. But keeping track of those things are important. Otherwise, you know, you don't know. It's hard to make those decisions. And I can't tell you how many times we all get fooled that something looks like it's working really well, but if we really analyze it and really look at the numbers, you know, it may not be as good a deal as we thought it was. And there's very few things that'll give us a better return than the basics. You know, doing a great job, providing a level of service that absolutely surprises people. That, you know, they come back and go, wow, you know, this is what I wanted. This is what I expect. You know, making, you know, calling the client before they expected to be called. You know, calling them before they had to call you. You know, just doing the basic things. There was, you know, it's the easiest. I don't know if I should say it's the easiest. I guess it's not the easiest because so few people do it. But it really is the easiest. I mean, providing excellent service is the most cost-effective, really the easiest thing to do. Now, very few do it, and that's probably a good topic to talk about. Is, you know, why don't people do it? You know, why don't people make the tough phone calls? Why don't people you know, respond in a timely manner? You know, why doesn't that happen? You know, we've all been guilty at some time or another of that. I don't like email, period, but I have a habit when someone sends me an email, or maybe I send them one and they send one back, I just delete it. You know, I don't even respond. Now I may in my mind go, okay, good, thanks, or, you know, that's handled. And I have to catch myself all the time and go, and it's a lot of times I'm going into my deleted box and then responding from there and saying, great job, or thank you, or this or that. But that's just, those type of things are all important things that we can be doing a much better job at. And there's no business that's more cost effective than the referral business that's available. And there's no better business than referral business, right? I mean, would you rather go on a listing appointment where their friend, their relative, their coworker said, hey, you got to hire John because he is the best agent I've ever dealt with? Or would you rather go on one where they're interviewing 12 agents to see who's going to offer the lowest commission? So it's the referral business is the foundational piece of having a great business. And the best way to get lots of referrals is to provide service that blows people away. Here's the good news: it's really easy to blow people away. I mean, the bar is pretty low, and so where was I? I was.
Return on investment.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking. I was just interviewed last week, and someone. I don't know who it was.
TV, the sports guy.
Yeah, I don't know, but whoever it was, they asked. I said, look, at my first week my first week in real estate, I came to two conclusions, and it was just by being in a real estate office for a week and watching and listening. And the two conclusions I came to, that if I told the truth, I'd be a head and shoulders above most of the people in my business, and if I did the things I said I was going to do, I would outshine most of the people in the business.
I was going to say, just commit to what you can commit to and do what you say you're going to do. I had this very conversation with a person who's extremely experienced as a real estate investor, worked in a related industry just yesterday, and she gave me an example of another agent in another company who she told, I want that house. When it comes, she missed it once. It actually came again within 2 years. You would think $1.5 million house, and so you would have that in your database. You should, and she didn't even get a phone call. And then the lady's like, "Well, I'll find you." Like, I'm never going to talk to her again. I said, she didn't do what she said. And you, in one phone conversation, has already been here at my house at the time you said. You gave me information. So it's like you said, just give them. If you can't do too much, just commit to whatever it is and give them the best you can, because they just want you to know that you're trustworthy, honest, and that you'll deliver on what you promise. And as you can grow your skill set, of course, or your bandwidth or your leverage, you may be able to offer more. But it's amazing what just doing what you say will do. It's just mind-boggling how people promise the world and can't even do any of it. And they may be good, but they just didn't deliver.
Well, and a lot of people don't have. This is not just real estate. A lot of people don't have a strong relationship to their word. They don't. What they say and what they do don't always match up. In fact, more times than not, it doesn't match up. But what are some, and this is a really good topic, what are some simple examples of doing that, where you can do that? I mean, I think of one instantly, and that is, you set an appointment, for 3 o'clock, be there, actually be there a little before 3 o'clock. Don't be there, 5 or 10 minutes late. What is that? What message does that send? If I have an appointment with someone and they show up late, it's not that I'm not going to understand or have empathy or anything else for them, but I am going to be wondering, am I that important to them? Or maybe I'm not that important to them, or maybe their job isn't that important to them, or all those things are what people think about. And then if you show up late to an appointment, I don't care what the reason is, but if you show up late, trust me, they're making judgments about you, and you've already set the level of expectation that they're going to have moving forward, and it's not the one you want to be setting. Now, are there times where we're going to be late? Absolutely. But what do? You pick up the phone call and call them. There was a stretch where, so there were times where they would book my appointments so many and so close that it was happening too often, that I was being late. But I would always call. I'd get out of my appointment and I'd call my assistant, call the Joneses and let them know I'm on my way, and I'm running 10 minutes behind. and he or she would call and say, Mr. and Ms. Jones, you have an appointment with Chris at 4 o'clock, and we just want to give you a call and let you know he just got done with his previous appointment. And he's on his way, but he won't be there till about 4:10. Is that still okay with you? And what we found was that phone call was so well received that they're like, oh my gosh, this agent's actually calling. They're professional enough to call. None of the other agents called. That for a while we did it intentionally. We just did that because it was such a positive thing that they were receiving it so well. It was setting us apart, such a differentiator. So, but those are the little things. What other examples are there? What other types of things?
One thing actually we got from you was ending your emails and conversations with here's what's going to happen next. And at the end of our transactions, always our clients are like, it happened exactly the way you said it would.
Yeah, that's a great one. That's a great example. Letting people know here's what's going to happen next. Because what does that do? It tells them what to expect. It gives you control over the expectations, and it's just great customer service. It's like it's what everyone wants. You go in for a medical procedure, you go in for your car to the shop, and there's things they have to do to it. You just want to know, okay, here's what's going to happen next. Here's you may not like it, but at least you know what's going to be happening. Yeah, John.
Something else I'm doing when I'm doing my lead follow-up is when I'm done, I actually send them an email with a summary of what we talked about and what I heard and when they can expect to hear from me next, and an invitation for them to call me if they need me sooner. They know, then they're clear, and then I put all those notes in my database.
That's a great idea. We just had a meeting. So we're dealing with lots of people in lots of different countries, and there's language issues and cultural issues, and what we've experienced is we don't always. Someone in our technology department might communicate something to them, or in KWU might communicate something to them, or marketing, and the person communicating it thinks that they got it, thinks they heard it, and we've had many examples of where they didn't get it, and or what they got was something totally different, and usually I'm the one that hears about it because I get the email. So one of the things that we just started doing, so we have all these, let's say we have a new country here, the one we just announced, we're going to be going into Dubai, right? So we have all our different departments, that are communicating with them and working with them to get them everything they need to be successful, and everyone's doing a great job in doing their job, but a lot of times this guy doesn't know what this department's saying or doing, and so on and so forth. So now we've created just a different model where the communication is going back and forth between, so everyone knows what's being said, and we're communicating and following up emails with the people we get off. So when we get off the phone, send that summary email. How many of you guys were here? David Bright was here a week or so ago, right? Were some of you guys in that meeting? So that was videoed. And when I watched that video, even I have time to watch a 57-minute video. But David said something there that I've always tried to get my team to do, sometimes more successfully than others. And that is, especially in certain situations, is to send a confirming email. I'm dealing with an extremely difficult situation in person right now. And I'll be calling him this afternoon. I can promise you there will be an email being sent to him after I hang up the phone confirming what we talked about. Because inevitably I will have a conversation with him, and what he will, it could be the wiring or the imagination, I don't know what it is, but what he will hear is completely different than what was discussed and talked about. So sending that email to confirm, okay, this will follow up our conversation. This is what we discussed. This is the action items. This is what we're going to do. These are the next steps, and here's what's going to happen next. Is not only is it a great way to stay out of trouble, but it's a great way to provide a higher level of service. Providing clarity in any situation is always welcomed. Is always valued.
As you know, I do a lot of probate sales, trust sales, and work with attorneys. So I'm always, when there's a point where they're comparing me with some other realtors, fact that I have that background always helps. But then I tell them, you know, anyone can sell a property. It's just what you do as you close, and then how you protect the estate after it closes, because that's when the lawsuits come in. So I say I start from a paranoid. I have a paranoid perspective that I'm going to get sued in 1 to 5 years from now. So what am I going to? How is the judge going to look at my conversation log? How is the judge going to look at? You know, they blow it up in 4x8 and put it in the courtroom. And is this your handwriting? Is this you? So that
And they do that.
so that always keeps me. That's where the confirming the conversation is just making sure that you don't leave anything to memory, because I know I'll forget it. So that's always very good too. That process.
And does it take a little more time to do that? Yes.
Yeah.
Take a little more energy to do that? Yes. It's time and energy well
Kind of
spent.
arguable though, because when your hit ratio goes up, it's not more time or energy.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
say what he's saying is,
Yeah.
John's saying is so valuable, because even if they're not in another language, like you're dealing with cultural and language, which the combination from first-hand experience can just.
Yeah.
But there's also this profile, then you communicate your way, they communicate. So I think that best practice works almost as soon as they speak from another place, because at the worst, they're going to think, wow, this guy gives great, or this woman gives great service. That's the worst can come out. The best is, maybe there was a misunderstanding of what you said.
Yeah.
And the language, it could just be style. And then email is dangerous as it is, and voicemail, and so you know, it's just another way.
There's so many things on this. What are some other ways of being able to give great service?
There's so many different ways that people contact us initially. Respond immediately, even if you're not prepared to have a full-on discussion. Simply, I had my 2-year-old daughter in my lap last night looking at nursery rhyme videos on YouTube before she goes to bed, and I got an inquiry from somebody from New England, and I turned them into a client this morning. But at the time, while she's watching, Baba Black Sheep or whatever it was, I sent a 1-sentence email and asked if it would be okay if we could speak at 8 a.m. And I think I captured them simply with that.
Yeah.
It's so easy.
Yeah.
Just be present and be aware and think like a consumer.
Yep. Yeah. People want responses quicker now than ever before, right? Yeah, we all do. I mean, look at, we got a question. If I have to, what do? I mean, we Google it, right? We want immediate. We don't want to call someone. We don't want to have to look at. We want the answer. So, and our clients, our buyers, and our sellers want that too. So, great points. Even if you don't have the answer, you in your mind you're saying, okay, well, I didn't call him because I didn't have the answer. In their mind, they're going, is he asleep at the wheel? Is she, they make up all sorts of stuff. So just let them know that you got the message, and you'll get back to them. And if you told them that, I should have an answer by, before noon tomorrow, and as soon as I do, I'll call you. And it's coming up noon, and you don't have an answer. What do? You call them and say, hey, look, I told you I'd call you. I hope to have an answer by now. I don't. It looks like it's not going to be another day before we do, but I will stay on top of it and keep you posted every step of the way. So what are some other examples? Steve?
When we think of first-class service, ever since we went into real estate, our tagline has been taking you first class to your real estate destination. But if you're going to take people first class, you've got to know what first class is. And I always say, a lot of times you think, it's like the family reunion, the sheriff where I stayed, I said, the service here is just awful compared to the Fairmont or the Beverly Wilshire or something like that, where we'd stayed recently. And I say, you've got to know the difference. You have to know the difference. And we've always said, work whatever you do, work to the upper 25%. And when I'm in a listing appointment, I tell people that, and I have to be guarded with the way I say it, so it doesn't seem arrogant. But when you're writing copy for a marketing piece, if another agent has used improper grammar, improper punctuation, pointing that out, because the upper 25% will notice the difference. If they don't notice it, it really doesn't matter. Not that they don't matter. It doesn't matter, but that upper 25% will. And so always knowing, and I think an incredible thing that we've been through twice now over the last few months is Lori Moore's Luxury Homes Conference, understanding what they expect. But there's just so many areas that you have. A lot of times I've told people who work with me, forget what you've ever learned before. Forget what you've ever learned before. traits that you've had and the patterns and the habits that you've had, they don't work for us. And so you have to know what that excellence is and what that expectation is.
Yep.
And I would say too, when you said give them the answer, I always anticipate what the next question might be. So I go even further.
Yep. Yeah, and remember, I think another good thing, beyond even taking the next step or what the next question, like Judy said, is we know what happens in a real estate transaction, right? We know what happens in a listing process, in putting a property on the market, and in the negotiation part. We know all that stuff. And we always have to remember that the clients don't, or even if they did at some point, they've forgotten, or even if they did at some point, what they know may not have been a good experience of how that should go. It might be their reality, and their they think that's how it always goes, but it may have been a really messed up way of having it done. So it's really educating people along the way is another way, not only to ensure that you have a happier client, but also to provide a better level of service. So when we educate people as to what to expect and what's going to happen and what's likely to happen, then they, there's a sense of confidence when it happens. They go, wow, it's just like you said, it happened. Oh, we got a really low offer. Versus, I'm insulted. Whatever it might be, they'll be okay with it if they know. But again, do we have to be thinking and putting ourselves in their shoes? Absolutely. And most of the time, if you just think about what you'd want, what you'd expect, how you'd like to be treated, and it's that's the golden rule's been around for a long time, but it really is that simple.
I think also because we do this every day, we kind of lose perspective about what they're thinking or what their concerns are. So Paul and I just had a baby in January, and like the doctors and the nurses at Sharp Mary Birch were awesome. They set all of our expectations, and they just seemed to care about our entire stay, the entire time we were there. And so we were like, we need to take this into account and treat every person we work with that same way, that this is the most important thing they're doing right now in their life. So.
Yeah. The couple of condos I just bought was a great experience for me to be a buyer, like a real buyer, have a real agent go through the whole process, and really see what it's like, and see what worked. Now this guy did a great job. Now, he knew who I was, and so I'm sure he, put on his A game. But his A game was an A game. He did a great job, and I can't tell you how many times during the process I had the thought, I hope my team's doing this. I hope they're doing this. I hope they're still doing this, or they this hasn't fallen off, or those type of things. So be thinking about what we'd want and how we'd like to be treated. I think Adam, you said something too that in terms of customer service and everything else, be careful with emails and text messages and sometimes even voicemail. You can't have any control over a conversation via email or how someone's going to interpret things. There are more misinterpretations in email than we will ever know. And it happens both ways. It happens all the time. I'm sure it happens with me a lot because of my great ability to communicate via email. But there's times where you should probably just pick up the phone and call them, and that's the thing to do. And if you know that, then do that. Take the time to do that.
Yeah. So Monica did this exercise here 2 months ago. I don't know. She's coming every week, but it's just mind-boggling how many ways one sentence email can be interpreted, intonation. So it's probably the one you most want to send the email is the most important time to call. If you maybe don't want to have a conversation, that's why you said that's the one that's probably the one that's most important to call, because if you're already thinking that, there's a reason you don't want to have a conversation. That's probably the one that's probably the most valuable call, because that's the one that's going to get misconstrued and create this tough 3 o'clock call.
And there's stuff that that you need to communicate that's going to cause a reaction that you're then going to need to deal with. And if you send that in an email, you don't have that opportunity. Or by the time you do have that opportunity, the damage has been done, or it's gone off in a direction that you didn't want to, or you didn't even imagine it would have. So that's real important. Steve.
And with emails, of course, Susan and I have always realized that anything in emails in capital letters is just referred to as shouting. And so we just never put anything in capital letters because we never know how it's going to be perceived. The other thing that I think is really inappropriate, and this is my personal opinion, is really inappropriate even in texting, is for us to use what I think is texting slang. And I reviewed a couple of days ago a number of agents who have been texting back and forth with, and almost every single one of them typed everything out. But I've got one agent who's been my competition. She's now cleaning houses, but had been my competition in this one farm. And every time she texts me back, instead of thank you or all right, it's just K, you know, like you would text your children or whatever. You cannot do that as an agent. You cannot use texting slang, in my opinion.
No, I agree with, not with clients.
Well, even like an example, this morning I had a client she had, I had helped her purchase a property a few years back. Now she's newly married and they live up in the Bay Area but still have the property here. But they'd like another property. So one came on the market yesterday. I sent it to her. And then this morning I got the email back, you know, where is the view here? And also what is what size is our property? Well, she had CC'd her new husband, and I had looked him up on LinkedIn. I know he's a pharmaceutical executive, just like she is. And I really took the time to write out a great email. And I anticipated that they would ask for comps for their property. So I did all of that. So I really went that extra, because I knew what the next question would be.
Yeah, that's a great example.
What's our property worth, and what's the new property?
And we know enough about what we do to anticipate what they're going to be thinking, what they're going to be wondering, what they're going to be wanting. And providing that before they have to ask for it is very impactful. It makes a huge impact on them.
Yeah, because I wanted her husband to look at that email and go, wow, this is a great agent that you've had in the past.
Yeah.
Right now I'm working with a first-time home seller, so it's been a great experience for me to put into practice, really walking them through the step, each step of the process, and trying to anticipate what's coming next, but also asking them at the end of conversations, do you have any other questions for me? And they've really appreciated that, to just be kind of handheld.
Yeah. No, that's a good, even if someone isn't a first-time buyer, that's sort of what we talked about a minute ago, or a first-time seller, they may not have done it for, maybe the last time they bought or sold was 7 years ago, or 12 years ago, or 21 years ago. So even though it's not their first time, it's provide the level of service that you would to someone who was going through it for the first time, because it really, if they did it 21 years ago, their memory of what actually happened is probably pretty foggy. So is ours. All right, so we've been talking about customer service. What other things can we brainstorm Mastermind about? How about Jim?
Syndication.
What about?
Just what do you hear on your level about syndication? I know that that's big in your world as you're launching it into launching the company into other areas of the world that don't have MLSs. At your level, what are you hearing where that's headed?
For us here in North America?
Both. I think both would be interesting to hear.
There's two things happening right now. There's the property portals that are making a strong push to control our information and control who gets our information and controls and would like to control what we're willing to pay for the leads that get generated from our information. At the same time, there's now, I think, starting to be a sort of a grassroots push and movement, and there will be more in the future of the industry saying, well, wait a minute, we should be controlling this. We always have. And we know what's best for the consumer is us giving them all the information and then us being able to respond directly to the consumer. So there's going to be, I mean, on one hand, it doesn't really matter. And I don't mean that, because whatever happens, we're going to adapt and adjust to figure out how to do our business, right? For 27 years, there's been more changes than you could think of, and we just keep adjusting and adapting to it and figure out how to win, and we'll continue to do that. But I think there will be some changes in the industry and with MLSs, and I think there's, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a push towards having a sort of a national MLS that all the agents would belong to, and anyways, we could talk about this, but it isn't going to help anyone here sell more houses. But yeah.
You said something earlier about pre-internet, pre-MLS. I mean, if everyone in here, and then we have however many 280 agents, would just use some of our systems, pretending like the MLS wasn't there. You just network. Like you said earlier, our intranet's a powerful tool just because it is a quick and efficient way to put something out to a large group of people that have shared interests and shared beliefs. I mean, and then combined with like Facebook, talking about Facebook being able to message people outside of our internet. I mean,
it's a huge.
Amazing how powerful. And before you didn't have Facebook, you didn't have internet, but it was basically the same thing. You networked, you picked up the phone, you went to mixers. You can do those things too. Now they're not as leveraged because you have to know.
No, those things used to be a necessity. You had to do those things, right? People, caravans. So caravans still exist. You guys still go out and put your properties on. Understand why caravans were ever created, right? So we had an MLS book. The MLS book was printed every 2 weeks, and there was no computer. There was a book, right? And so you'd get a book, and 2 weeks later, you were waiting to get it to see the new listings. So if you took a listing, and it wasn't going to be 2 more weeks before anyone would know about it, you would go to Caravan and tell all your fellow agents and brokers about it.
Or you got a weekly supplement.
Or you got a weekly supplement.
Then there was the thermal paper.
Yes, the mimeographs. But that's why we did those things. And the office meeting was an opportunity to have all of us in a room and say, hey, I got a listing coming up. I just took a listing. I'm going to be taking a listing. Here's what it is. Here's the price. Here's what their motivation is to do it. And then 2 or 3 people would be coming up and go, hey, when can I show it? Or I have someone that maybe, or I have a buyer, or I meet with a buyer today, and this is what they're going to be looking for. And so that basic level of communication is how many, many, many transactions got done.
In that level of communication and the networking and everything, we have our own intranet. How do we communicate with the people in other Keller Williams? Is that something that had created, or there's, I mean, it may be something that I don't know, but it would be great. Like I have a listing right now, a pocket listing in South area. So I think that if I could, I was planning to call the manager out there and say, hey, how do I tell you about this? They're not going to
Those are the,
MLS.
yeah.
Is there any way that I can give it to them and they can send it to the internet? But she wasn't.
Yeah, so here's how you could do that. So it's the same way we used to do it. So there's no Keller Williams, countywide, statewide, nationwide intranet. But yeah, we used to do the same thing. We'd go down to their office and say, hey, can we be at your office meeting and pitch our new listing or pitch this new buyer need. Or I always had a list of agents. For when I had a buyer that needed something, I always knew the 5 or 10 agents that were listing a lot of houses. And they were always the first 5 I was calling. Hey, if you got anything coming up that, is this or is that or is over here or is over there, would you do me a favor and let me know? And because those are the agents that are always coming in contact with the most properties. Or if I had agents I knew that always had a bunch of buyers they were running around, and I knew it because they were always showing my listings. you know, those are the ones I'd call ahead of time and say, hey, I just want to let you know we just took a listing. It's not going on the market till Tuesday because, you know, they're out of town or whatever, but I just want to give you a heads up, you know, and they love that and appreciate that. And guess what happens next time I'm writing an offer on one of their listings? You know.
Yeah, that's, the intranet, I thought it was designed that it was going to go, it says your market center only, alluding to that perhaps there's going to be, so far I've just sent it to the team leader and say someone that you can get to do it, and they'll post it if you send them the, but it should be.
There's a Keller Williams referral network, I don't know if you've gone on that.
The intranet's pretty powerful for our network, but Facebook or any other electronic quick and out.
And there's also, you know, if it's a luxury property, there's the luxury division. If it's a property that would appeal to international buyers or a property that you're trying to market to international buyers, you know, there's the global property specialist. So there's other groups to be able to market it to too. Lisa.
I just have a topic on it. I
Yeah.
want to get information on a different topic once we're done with this thing.
Yeah, we're bouncing around whatever topic.
I'm curious what people in the room are doing with virtual assistants. What your thoughts are on virtual assistants?
Does anyone have a virtual assistant? Emily, Miguel, Amy, what do you guys tell us a little bit about how you use them and what they do for you?
Pull-in numbers, answering phone calls from agents now. So rather than calling me and Paul, he answers the phone calls, and for the most part, he can answer pretty much all of them.
Is your VA U.S. based or?
No, Philippines. And yeah, and he actually has his own MLS login, and he was able to get it from Sandacor, and he didn't have to go sit through the 1 hour thing. So yeah, so he kind of maintains a lot of our listings and fields phone calls and things like that.
Who else? How are you guys doing? Miguel?
We do, I had one from, very technical one from Mumbai first, but I just could not deal with the accent, so I switched over to the Philippines. And
We actually asked for one who didn't have much of an accent,
Yeah.
just for to
Yeah.
answer the calls.
But he does pretty much everything. I mean, at one point, he writes my contracts, he fills in, you know, if I have an upcoming listing, he'll input information that's incomplete, or pull the real list reports. He'll fill in as much as he can on, you know, anything. He has access to my zip forms, he has his own MLS access also. You know, anything that, pretty much anything that your assistant could do without touching that. I mean, now it's everything. We had a phone for him, but it was that didn't work out. It was off and on. But really, I mean, they can, you know, research anything. There's a new program, you know.
There's like a special Skype that works really well, and it doesn't, because we had that same issue where it was like cutting out, and I don't know, you can like upgrade
How many
it.
hours a week are your assistants?
Oh, we have two full-time VAs.
I have half part-time from 1 to 4.
Okay.
So, yeah.
One other thing they do for us, because we do a lot of mailings, and so they'll clean up our mailing list, because like we'll get a list and there'll be a bunch of trusts. And it's kind of, you know, if you send it to the mailing house and they just pull the first names, Dear Trust, that's, you know, so they'll go into Realist and put the correct first and last names in just to make our numbers.
What company is that?
It's through My Outdesk.
My Outdesk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they have been trained, I share with Miguel, and he fully understands the edge. If I say to him, put out the, you know, spring forward blast, that's all I have to say. He knows where to get it, how to get it, goes, and I just tell him which groups in the database if I want it to all. In that case, that's going to affect everyone, so I just tell them all.
Did you train them on that, or did it come to you to train them on it?
Well, Miguel, the companies, my Outdesk, have specialized in people that have been trained, but it's an ongoing training, right? New stuff happens, so it's partially trained, but these companies, they email us like every week, and you should be getting the email. We have.
I get all your emails, Adam.
No, not mine, but like people from the VA companies sending out, saying, we have Keller Williams trained.
I sat with the guys from My Outdesk, the two brothers who own that family reunion, which was I was curious. John, or did someone else have anything?
But I would say also graphics. So depending on the person, like the one that we're using, he can design flyers, or, I mean, I don't know, you tell me if you think that's a good flyer, but he did that.
What do they charge?
$8.
Yeah,
$8
$2
an
is
hour.
like $8.
But they're cheaper. I mean, you can get them for $5, but again,
They're not as skilled and not as trained and.
It's not worth saving the extra buck.
No.
So too, I mean, these guys are paying $8 or $9. They already know our systems. They know real estate, not just ours. They know Santa Clara.
I'll do videos, I'll send it to them, and they'll edit them and put title. I mean, they'll do. I mean, you have to find one who knows how to
Is
do
there
it.
anything you'd want them to do that they're not doing for you or don't know how to do for you?
Is there anything?
Yeah.
So just the calls. The call would just be just having a good. And we tried Skype, and then I stopped. I gave up on that because now I have a full-time assistant here also. But that was the weak link. A little bit of the downside is that there's typhoons, monsoons,
The internet goes out.
holidays, and so you just have to be flexible and understand the nature of international workforce. So you just have to be relaxed about it, and sometimes the communication, there's no power. So how we've beat that one is to always have through a G Drive or Dropbox, something, always have a list of tasks. And if there happens to be no power that day, he knows what tasks have to be done, and he'll make it up. He'll make up, earlier or afterwards. And you need to keep track of everything that you said to him in a way where, okay, he's working on it, okay, he's done, then let's do the document, the final thing. So I mean, now we have it pretty well established. And you just have to, the toughest part is to keep them busy when you start. How much do you start giving them? How much do you start giving them? Now we're at the point where now he's behind. Now we can give him so much stuff that now he's scrambling trying to keep up with that. So that's a good point. And don't check everyone. What you do these last 30 minutes? You start looking at that, you're going to go crazy. I've had people say, well, how do we know that they're working? And how will we know they're not watching TV? And I'll say, then don't get one.
They don't have TVs. All right, what other?
The best leverage one could have, to be honest. I mean, I've had highly trained executive assistants that that requires a lot more of your inner management. These people are highly skilled and very motivated living in these other countries. The $8 an hour is a huge income for them. And they know multiple computer systems, they know the resource, they know where to find it on the net, they know our systems in this case.
I know, RVA showed us something in real estate that we didn't even know about.
I mean, as far as leverage goes, I mean, there are things you need someone physically here for, and that's, they can't compile this binder. But we have interns that'll do that all day long. But the VAs, the skill sets, I mean, if you're not using one and you need help, I would find
Bruce.
I take a different approach, and it's personal. Everyone has to make their own choices. I have an assistant. She works full-time for me. She's here in an industry that locally pays X. I pay her more than that. I pay her a piece of each deal. And if we reach a delta above a certain amount, it can actually become much more meaningful to her. And, I just ask, the reason I do that is, I know about the availability of workers overseas. I don't want someone coming along and saying, well, I hired this real estate broker who's based in the Philippines, and they can sell my house for $300 because it's a huge income to them. I don't want to foster that. I just like to take a personal interest in the economy, in my community, and in my country. That's why I do it. But, it's interesting. If you look strictly at the numbers, it's got to be pretty fulfilling.
I would never see, and you guys have a memo when using calls, I would never see that person interfacing with my clients.
Oh, they don't.
But they have people who are doing it, it's working for you.
No,
I
no,
didn't
no.
see that in my business.
Oh, they just talk to agents who
Yeah, to
can't read the
agents, you're not
MLS.
talking to clients, but even to agents. And I think there's also
I thought
room
you
for
said to client.
human.
Oh,
I
no,
thought
no,
you-
no,
I
no,
thought you
no.
said to consumers
No,
as
no,
well.
no, we have
Yeah,
a
no,
staff
not
who.
to the consumer, but I think you're
No,
right. You
just to
can
other
support
agents.
someone here, and there's need for both, but I think the
Right.
question was about the use them and what to use them for, because there's certain things that leveraging to a person they're probably faster than most people here. Like when you go to a printer and you use their design person, they're charging you big bucks by the minute, like an attorney almost. These guys can do it, give them camera ready art, and then the printer just hits print.
Right.
And it's like,
It was pretty startling. I had a logo developed for my business for $19 out of India,
Yeah.
which scared the living daylights out of me, because if a logo can be designed for $19, how much can a house be sold for?
Well, those guys have been offering to sell houses for free for beginning of the time, so that's never going to change. All right, what other challenges? How about what are you doing to stay on schedule? What things help you stay focused? Yeah. What do you do? Who has a schedule?
I just wanted to. Somebody had asked about getting the phone numbers, and I was trying to pull it up, but from Family Reunion, I haven't used it. But what I wrote down is different part of the country is using something called Relevate and then Coles Directory. I know nothing about them, but that's the names that came up during the meeting.
We use Coles.
And then Relevate. Yeah. So I just wanted to.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
The Coles Directory is more of a home-based phone, which is going away as we speak. I personally don't even have a home phone number anymore. And then I think the other Relevate I heard is cell phones, which is where everybody's going.
Yeah, there's something that can pull from the email address. They backtrack everything, right? If that email address has ever been used, they can generate the
Okay,
number.
the email, that would be good.
They scour the internet and they go to
They're able
Facebook
to,
and
yeah,
all those
reverse
things.
everything to it. I think that's
Wow.
Relevate.
Well,
Yeah, it's
What? So let's. What other things can we talk about that be useful? Challenges, schedule, mindset.
Christine, you talk about teams, like forming a team.
Yeah. So what do you want to talk about?
Just, I mean, I think there's a lot of people that, I know the first step is always hiring an assistant, and then, you don't have a ton of listings and you're nervous to hire a buyer's agent, but obviously that's all going to be conducive to, getting busier, and it's going to happen. But I mean, for somebody that's, doesn't have a team yet, what would you?
All right. So in the MREA, Gary teaches about leads, listings, and leverage. All right. Leads, listings, leverage. And if you need it in black and white, you can find it all over here. So we know that our job is to generate leads, and we generate leads so we can get listings. And at some point we have to become, well, we don't have to, but we want to become masterful at leverage, all right? Because leverage allows us to do more. All right? As an individual agent, there's a finite amount of time and energy that you have, and a finite amount of time of buyers you can work with, sellers you can work with, and things that need to be done to take care of the business. So the goal is never to build a team or to build a big team or to build, the goal is to sell more houses. Now the team is a byproduct out of you selling more houses. So as you become more effective at generating leads, at taking more listings, then you need help. You need help to take care of that business. Because if you don't get help, then you'll be taking care of it. And as you're taking care of it, then what happens? Your lead generation stops, which then the listings stop coming in, and then you're back. Once that business is closed, then you're starting that cycle again. So what we want to do is put ourselves in a position where we're spending the bulk of our time on the most important things. And for us to do that, then we need to have help. So yes, the first person you're going to hire is an admin person, because whether it's answering phones, doing paperwork, doing inputting of listings, managing the database, following up on things, is not a good use of our time. That's not what people are hiring us to do. You go to the doctor because you're sick. You want the doctor to be available. You want the doctor to be able to take care of you. You want the doctor to tell you what to do. If that doctor couldn't do any of those things because he was spending time, pulling your file and filing your file and billing your insurance company and doing lab tests and all those things, you'd go get another doctor. But that doctor, has evolved, right? The old days, black bag, house calls, now office, with the specialists that do all those things in the office, so the doctor is freed up to do one thing: be in front of patients, be in front of patients, be in front of patients. So we want to be the same way. We want to be in front of buyers and sellers, period. And that means, and eventually, just sellers. And for those of you who like being with buyers, sorry. But that's where we want to be. So that's where the team comes in. So the first hire is that admin person that can do all those things that you can pay someone to do, so you can go out and make more money and have bigger profit at the end of the month and more money at the end of the year. Since we focus on listings, because if we have listings, then we'll never have a shortage of buyers. The buyers take up a lot more time than helping someone than selling a house, than listing a house, right? So having someone that you're either referring your buyers to or showing assistant that's showing the properties for you, then becomes a good way to leverage your time. You know? So, and before that book was ever written, and before anything people were ever doing it, I had a showing assistant. And the only reason I had one is because it didn't make sense not to. You know, if someone needed to buy a home and it was going to take 4 or 5 days, I mean days, you know, morning till end of the day, of helping them see all the homes they needed to see and find the home they want to buy and get in that home, that meant there were 4 or 5 days that I couldn't be lead generating, that I couldn't be listing houses, I couldn't be building my business. So I just had someone that would go show the properties, and when they found the ones they liked, then they came back, and I dealt with it then. But while they were doing that, driving around, looking at houses, you know, I could be doing my job, which is to lead generate and get more listings. So now I never once had the goal of building a team. My only goal was to make more money, and to make more money meant I had to sell more houses, and to sell more houses, the team evolved and grew out of that. So the focus always needs to be on, okay, what do we need to do to sell more homes? How can we leverage ourselves? How can we be more efficient? You know, that's the key, right? There's not more time that you can secretly have than anyone else in this room. There's a finite amount of that. But we can become more efficient with our time through leverage. What else about teams do you want to talk about? How many of you have an assistant, or whether it's virtual or real, or we ask a question, or you? Okay, go ahead.
I'm answering the question, yes.
Okay. Okay.
In the showing assistant model, did you feel, well, you didn't do buyers, you kind of quickly figured out you're going to refer them out. But for others that still have buyers, or might have a buyers, eventually involved in a buyer's team because you brought them back in-house.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you were, I mean, it's like giving away part of your relationship with the client and the rapport building and hearing those, how did you, that's the part of, I understand the leverage side. That's the easiest thing to understand. It's the pain in the butt to show properties, especially now when you've got to be on them like in 2 minutes. You know, if you're not, someone else already sold it. But the part about when I'm in the house with the people and I watch the wife's eyes light up, I understand that a little bit better than maybe my showing assistant. How do you recreate that? What's the system? I know it's not a 5-second answer. What are the things they train them on, or what are the?
No, it's a great point, because
thing
yeah,
house, and
I
can get the report that here's the top three of this, and I can get all that.
So there's a couple things that make that easier. All right, and is it going to be uncomfortable? Absolutely. And you're not going to avoid that. One of the things that makes it easier is knowing why you're doing it. Now, in my mind and in my heart, I knew I was providing a higher level of service to the client by doing that. There was no doubt in my mind, because if it took it, the typical agent who, if John's a buyer, and John goes to an agent and says, help me find a home, and that buyer or that agent's helping John buy a home, that a lot of the time they aren't helping John buy a home. A lot of the time they're working on escrows. A lot of the time they're going on listing appointments. A lot of the time they're working with other buyers. They're doing on marketing. They're answering the phone. They're doing all sorts of other jobs. I knew if I had a showing assistant that I said, John, let me explain to you how I work. It's a little different than most agents. I have a team, and part of my team is my showing assistant. And Emily's my showing assistant, and here's what's great. All Emily does is look at houses all day long and helps people like you find the house that you want. So she knows the inventory as well as anyone out there. And so what's going to happen is Emily's going to be the one who's going to spend all her time, she doesn't do anything other than this, to help you find your home. With other agents, that doesn't happen. With other agents, they may say they're going to spend all their time, but we know the reality is they have other clients and other things they have to do. So we're going to be more available, more accessible, and be able to respond much quicker to your needs, which is a benefit to you. And the good news is once you find the home, then you get me to negotiate. And I've negotiated as many contracts as anyone else in this area. So you're going to get the best of both worlds. Someone who's just focused on you day and night, and someone who's very experienced at handling the negotiations. Does that make sense? And so I knew that by doing that, by operating that way, I was going to be doing a better job for them. There was no doubt in my mind. Now, let me distinguish something. If I was in a house with a buyer, there's very few people that could probably be more effective than I could. But I also knew that wasn't the best use of my time. And I also knew, because I was absolutely committed to building my business, that I really wouldn't be able to give them all the time and attention they needed. So was Emily going to be as good as me? Probably not. Could she get as good? Yeah. But the overall system was better for the buyer. And it allowed me to do the thing I wanted to do too, which was to build the business and sell more houses. So part of that was just mindset. A big part of it was mindset. The other part of it is how you present it. A buyer or seller will go along with anything if they see the self-interest in it for them. If they see the benefit to them and understand the benefit to them, they'll be fine with it. There's, go ahead.
Do you think that once you adopt that or commit to that, it's a commitment that you're going to cut that arm off, that you got to let it go all the way, or can you say, whenever I'm not available, I have a person that's like,
you absolutely can ease into it. It's up to you. I remember.
Clients want you.
They do and they don't. I have.
They want to see houses. They want.
They want the service. I have clients.
Would you put a personal friend with your showing assistant?
Absolutely. Right now, as we speak, well, in about 10 minutes, Aaron and Monica are showing up, and these clients know I'm in town because I'm having dinner with them tonight because they're friends of mine. Aaron and Monica is at an appointment at their house out in the Bridges right now, and I explained to her when I talked to her on Monday night when I was in Austin that this is how we can help you, this is how it will work. I said, and she knows that I'm in Austin, or elsewhere almost all the time. I said, look, here's why we're still the best person for you. We're the most experienced. We know what to do and how to do it. There's no secret things to getting a house on the market or exposing it to buyers, but you want someone that you can trust who knows what they're doing, and that's what we are for you. And she goes, yeah, you're right. That's what I care about. Now, I'll get to both of you guys in a second. But you can absolutely ease into it, and you can choose. You can cherry pick. Some of the buyers. I mean, I can't remember this for sure, but I'm sure that there were buyers that I chose to work with because I knew they were going to buy a house that day. I also remember showing up, and this is one of the last times that I showed up to show someone a house, and there was just a gut feeling that I'm going to go meet this guy, and I showed up, and he goes, "Wow, the boss is here." What I wasn't expecting the boss to show up, and now that guy has turned out to be a very good friend, has turned out to be a business partner, and this was a long time. I don't even know when I met him, 10, 12, 15 years ago. But I just had a gut feeling, what, I'm going to meet this guy. Something about the way he sounded and what we talked about. And so you can pick and choose, and you may always want to do a little bit of it. But the key to leverage is, and at some point you'll either make the decision, what, I'm not going to do it at all anymore, or I just